I used to think I was in a regular marriage, not perfect, but fine. We had our ups and downs like anyone else. You compromise, you let things go, you pick your battles. That's what I told myself. Until one afternoon, on a drive through the Arizona desert, my wife compared me to a rescue dog. I laughed at first. I thought it was just a bad joke. But then I saw her friends in the back seat, laughing too hard, exchanging looks like it was some inside joke. That was the moment everything cracked. You know that split second when something feels off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That drive should have been peaceful. Instead, it became the starting point of a complete unraveling of everything I believed about my relationship. I started to wonder, how long had I been the punchline in my own marriage? What if the person you trust the most has spent years slowly chipping away at you, not with cruelty you can name, but with subtle manipulations you only see when you step back? What if the life you've built is quietly built on control, shame, and performance, and how would you even begin to wake up to that? My name is Ethan, I'm 42 years old, and I spent 8 years in a marriage that looked normal from the outside, but was built on lies I didn't want to see. I didn't think of myself as the kind of man who'd get manipulated. I thought I was strong, rational, independent. Turns out I was none of those things, not until I lost everything I thought was real. This is the story of how one passing comment pulled the thread that unraveled my entire life, and how, somehow, that unraveling turned out to be the beginning of something better. That morning started like most others. I got up around 6, brewed my usual coffee, black, no sugar, and sat at the kitchen island scrolling the news. The house was quiet. Jenna was still upstairs, probably doing her skincare routine, something that had gradually expanded into a whole ritual over the years. I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt. Our house was clean, organized, tastefully decorated with the kind of neutral tones Jenna liked. Zen but modern, she'd say. I had a routine. I liked it. Routine felt like control, and I thought we were both on the same page about that. We'd go to work, meet up with friends on the weekends, occasionally do a weekend getaway if Jenna found a good deal online. I handled the yard. She handled the bills. We weren't overly romantic, but we weren't cold either. At least I didn't think we were. Jenna came downstairs in her usual stylish, effortless way, holding 2 cups, one for her, one for me, even though I already had mine. She smiled, kissed my cheek and said, "Let's get out of town this weekend." Just like that, no build-up. She wanted to drive out to Sedona, stay at some spa retreat she'd read about, and just disconnect. I remember feeling surprised, but also kind of glad. It had been a while since we'd done something just the two of us. I figured maybe this was her way of reconnecting. Maybe things were better than I thought. So I said yes. Packed a small bag, filled up the tank, and we hit the road. I had no idea what that drive would reveal, or that the version of my life I thought was stable was about to fall apart. Jenna's request sounded simple enough. She framed it like a spontaneous escape, saying she needed to breathe and reset. I didn't question it. She'd been more stressed than usual lately. Late nights at work, vague mentions of tension with her boss, the kind of things she never really elaborated on. But when she brought up the retreat, she was unusually animated. Said it was supposed to be life-changing, that we'd come back aligned. Her words, not mine. She showed me the website, soft colors, mountain views, infinity pools. It was the kind of place she loved, peaceful, curated, very Instagram-friendly. She even joked that I should bring a journal, which made me laugh because she knew I didn't do that kind of thing. "You could surprise yourself," she said, with that same half-smile she used when she was nudging me into something I didn't know I'd agreed to yet. Looking back, I think she'd already planned everything down to the last detail. It wasn't just a weekend trip. It felt more like a performance. She packed for me, double-checked the check-in times, even called ahead to make sure we'd get the quiet suite. She was being thoughtful, yes, but also strangely controlling now that I think about it. At the time, though, I saw it as her trying, like maybe we'd turned some invisible corner and she wanted to reconnect. I didn't feel suspicious, I felt hopeful. That's probably what stings the most now, that I mistook calculation for care. I packed my bag thinking this trip might bring us closer, when really it would open a door I couldn't close again. The drive to Sedona started out quiet. We had music playing, some playlist Jenna made with soft indie tracks, the kind of thing that fills silence without demanding attention. The sun was low on the horizon, the kind of Arizona light that makes everything glow. It should have been peaceful, but something felt hollow. She was scrolling through her phone more than usual, not really talking. I figured she was just decompressing. Halfway through the drive, she opened a bottle of wine. Not unusual for her to have a drink on trips. She brought her stainless steel tumbler for that. I was focused on the road, sipping my gas station coffee, just letting the miles pass. Then her phone buzzed. She giggled, typed something quickly, and laughed again, this time louder, like she couldn't hold it back. That's when she said it. "You know what I told them?" she said, looking at me with this teasing smirk. "I said you're like a rescue dog, loyal, eager to please, just needed a little training." And she laughed. Not just a chuckle, like really laughed. I didn't know what to say. In the rearview mirror, I could see her friends' faces on a video call, two of them, blurry and glowing. They were laughing too. I smiled, numb, said nothing. Because what do you even say to that? The rest of the drive blurred. I kept my hands at 10 and 2, eyes straight ahead. The playlist kept going. She sipped her wine and I replayed her words over and over. Rescue dog, trained, loyal. It wasn't just a bad joke. It was a mirror I hadn't asked to look into. And once I saw what was in it, I couldn't unsee it. It's strange how a single sentence can rearrange your entire memory. The moment she called me a rescue dog, it didn't just sting. It rewrote everything I thought I understood about us. I kept driving, but inside I was somewhere else. Her voice echoed in my head, over and over, like background noise I couldn't shut off. Not the words themselves, but the way she said them, like it was obvious, like everyone already knew. Loyal, eager to please, just needed a little training. I couldn't stop turning those over. I thought back to all the times I'd compromised, changing weekend plans to fit her schedule, giving up hobbies because they were too solitary, agreeing to job changes because she said they were better for our future. At the time, I thought that was love. Give and take. Normal stuff. But now it felt like all that giving had a pattern, a goal. And it wasn't partnership, it was control. The laugh in her voice, the look on her face, it wasn't affection, it was pride. Like she was proud of how much I'd bent without ever realizing it. I kept thinking, who says that about their husband, even as a joke, and to friends? On a video call, that's not just a slip of the tongue, that's someone showing their hand, letting you see the truth by accident. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. I smiled. I nodded. I made small talk. But in my head, something had shifted. I wasn't just feeling hurt, I was starting to feel suspicious, the kind of suspicion that doesn't go away, the kind that follows you home and doesn't let you sleep. The drive back from Sedona felt endless. We took the same roads, passed the same desert landmarks, but nothing looked familiar. I was there, behind the wheel, but it was like watching someone else's life from the passenger seat. Jenna was on her phone again, chatting, swiping, occasionally humming to whatever song was playing. She looked relaxed, like the weekend had done what she wanted, like everything was fine, but in my chest it felt like something had cracked. I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt was heavier than that, like grief, like I'd lost something I hadn't even realized I was holding on to. I started remembering things, little moments over the years that didn't seem like much at the time. Comments Jenna made in front of friends, her subtle corrections when I told stories, how she'd mock my quirks in this playful way that never quite felt like a joke, how I always brushed it off, told myself I was being sensitive. Now it was like a projector turned on in my head, replaying everything in a different light. I couldn't ignore the patterns anymore, the way I adapted to keep the peace, the way I let things go, told myself not to rock the boat. Every time I gave in, she got a little more control, and I didn't see it, because I didn't want to. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter as we got closer to home. I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. All I knew was that something was wrong, deeply wrong. And for the first time in years, I couldn't talk myself out of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while Jenna slept next to me like nothing had happened. I could hear her breathing, the soft rhythm of someone completely at ease. Meanwhile, my mind wouldn't stop. I kept going back year by year, fight by fight, all the moments I brushed off as quirks or tension or just the reality of marriage. I remembered how she'd always talk about teaching me things. How to dress, how to communicate better, how to present myself in social settings. At first I thought she was just confident, maybe even helpful. I saw it as part of her personality. But now I realized how one-sided it all was. I changed for her, adjusted constantly. She never changed for me. If I ever asked for something different, she'd call me dramatic or needy. She'd laugh it off, accuse me of being too sensitive. And I'd believe her. Even the way she managed money started to feel suspicious in hindsight. I gave her control of our finances because she said she was better at it. And honestly, I was fine with that. But any time I asked questions or wanted to look at the accounts, she got defensive, told me I didn't trust her, made me feel guilty for even asking. Over time, I stopped asking. It was like a slow erosion. I didn't notice how much of myself I'd given up until there was almost nothing left that was mine. I used to be opinionated. I used to have boundaries. Now I wasn't even sure who I was outside of this marriage. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just been controlled, I'd been shaped, molded into something she wanted, and I let her. The next morning, Jenna left early for a yoga class at the retreat. I stayed behind, still in my head, trying to make sense of what I was feeling. I made coffee, sat down at the kitchen counter, and grabbed the laptop. I only meant to check the news, maybe distract myself, but when I opened the browser, her social media was still logged in. I don't know what made me look. Maybe I'd already made up my mind. Maybe I was hoping to find nothing to prove myself wrong. But the second I clicked on her messages, I knew. There were threads with her closest friends, screens full of comments about me. Some were mocking, pet names I didn't know about, inside jokes that painted me as a clueless, obedient husband. Others were worse. They were strategic, like they'd been coaching her. How to steer me, how to frame things so I'd agree without realizing I had a choice. One message said, "If he ever pushes back, cry. Works every time." That one made my stomach turn, but it didn't stop there. I found messages to her brother about moving money. She'd been shifting funds into a separate account, hiding things, planning for something without me. That was when it stopped feeling like emotional distance or a bad patch. This was intentional, coordinated, long-term. I sat there, hands cold on the keyboard, scrolling through years of conversations I was never meant to see. And with every line, the story I thought I was living slipped further away. This wasn't about one cruel joke. This was about who she really was, and who she'd always been. The worst part wasn't just what Jenna had done. It was how casual she was about it. These messages weren't part of some heated moment. They were jokes, updates, a running commentary on my life that I didn't even know existed. I read through years of back and forth between her and her friends, and almost every mention of me came with a punchline. They called me Golden Retriever, Doormat, Captain Permission. One message read, he'd say yes to setting himself on fire if I smiled while asking. Another, he cried during a commercial once. I thought I'd die from second-hand embarrassment. These weren't just snide remarks, they were rehearsals of humiliation, designed to be laughed at, and they were. It wasn't only Jenna chiming in, her friends played along, encouraged her. They'd send her memes mocking husbands, tag her in posts about managing your man, and congratulate her when she got her way after a fight. She'd brag about manipulating me, subtle things like withholding affection until I caved on something, or spinning stories to make me feel guilty. He thinks it's his idea, she wrote once, works every time, reading. All that made me feel like I'd been living in a movie I didn't know I was cast in. I wasn't a husband. I was a project, a performance, an inside joke. And what hurt the most was realizing that the love I thought I had, whatever was left of it, was never real for her. It was leverage, something she could shape and laugh about when I wasn't looking. I wasn't just angry, I was embarrassed, humiliated, because I believed it all, every word, every smile, every time she said I was her rock. Turns out I was just her safety net. After the messages, I couldn't stop digging. I opened her email, then our shared financial accounts, and what I found didn't just upset me, it scared me. She hadn't just been mocking me behind my back. She'd been quietly moving our money, bit by bit, month after month. There was a secondary savings account I didn't know existed, hidden under her maiden name. Transfers labeled with vague things like consulting or future fund. I checked our joint account and realized she'd been underreporting expenses, asking for my half of things we'd already paid for, and padding charges with made-up costs. She'd been siphoning money for at least 2 years. One statement hit me like a punch. A payment labeled legal consultation. It wasn't from when we were buying our house. It was recent. Too recent, and it wasn't the only one. There were charges to a luxury rental service too, one we never used together. I sat there with our financial history open like a wound, realizing just how carefully this had all been done. It wasn't impulsive, it wasn't sloppy, it was planned. She was setting herself up to leave, or worse, she was making sure that if things fell apart, I'd be the one left scrambling. I felt stupid, completely played. I'd trusted her with everything, every bill, every login, every future plan. She'd said we were a team, that I didn't need to stress over numbers, that she had it all covered. And she did. Just not the way I thought. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Not of money, but of security, of choice, of trust. And now, for the first time, I realized I had to get out. Not later. Not after we talked. Now. The first person I called was Marcus. I didn't even think about it. I just pulled out my phone and hit his name. We hadn't talked in a while, not really. Life had gotten busy. He lived across town, had a kid, a demanding job. But he was the one person I knew would answer without needing a long explanation. He picked up on the second ring. "What's up, man?" he said, casual like always. And I just said, "I need you to come over. I found something. I think Jenna's been lying to me for a long time." There was a pause. No questions. Just a quiet, "Give me 20 minutes." When he walked in, I didn't even have to explain much. He looked at the open laptop, saw the bank statements, the messages. I pointed at a few lines and showed him the hidden account. I expected shock or outrage. What I got was something worse. Recognition. "I've always thought something was off," he said, "but I didn't want to say anything. You seemed locked in, like if I brought it up I'd lose you." It hit me how isolated I'd become. I hadn't just been manipulated by Jenna. I'd also been slowly cut off, from friends, from perspective, from outside voices that might have helped me see the truth sooner. Marcus didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't need to. What he did say was this: "We're going to fix this. You're not doing it alone." And that one line, that small sentence, was the first moment I felt like maybe I could breathe again. Maybe I could still get my life back, not all at once, but piece by piece. With Marcus by my side, the first thing we did was make a list. Not emotional stuff, practical, cold, focused. I needed to secure what was mine before Jenna realized I was onto her. That meant passwords, bank accounts, legal documents, anything she could use against me or manipulate if she sensed things slipping. I changed the login info on every shared account, froze our joint credit cards, pulled statements going back 5 years and saved them offline. I called the bank and flagged the accounts for suspicious activity. The woman on the phone asked if I was reporting fraud. I hesitated, then said, "Not yet, but I might be." Then came the house. Technically, it was in both our names, but I was the one who paid the mortgage every month. I gathered all the proof, receipts, pay stubs, every transaction. Marcus put me in touch with a lawyer, someone discreet. I wasn't filing anything. Yet, just asking questions, getting informed, I even changed the locks. Not because I thought she'd do something crazy, but because I needed one place, just one, where I felt safe again, where I could breathe without wondering what she was plotting. She still had a key. She could call a locksmith. But it was
symbolic. It was strange. For the first time in years, he felt altered, panicked.
I was protecting myself, quietly, strategically, and that clarity, that sense of control was the first real thing I'd felt in weeks, maybe even years. I didn't make a big announcement. No public posts, no dramatic speeches. I just started, making calls, quiet ones, thoughtful ones, the people who mattered, people I trusted. My sister, my cousin Brian, two old friends from college. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. The conversations all went the same way. A pause, a sigh, then something like, "I always felt something was off," or, "She never really let us in, did she?" It was subtle, but it hit me. Everyone had sensed something. They just hadn't known how to bring it up. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't listen, and to be fair, maybe I wouldn't have. What struck me most wasn't their shock, it was their relief. Like they'd been waiting for this version of me to show up again. The one who spoke plainly. The one who wasn't walking on eggshells. They didn't press me for details. They just said, "Whatever you need, I'm here." I didn't expect that kind of grace. I'd been so wrapped up in my own shame, I forgot that other people still saw me, really saw me, and they hadn't given up. Then I called Jenna's brother. That one felt risky, but I needed context, and what he told me filled in all the blanks. Her behavior wasn't new. It went back years, childhood. Control had always been her comfort zone. And manipulation, her defense mechanism. He wasn't surprised, just sad. That call confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't about a fight or a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, a deep one, and I was finally stepping out of it. Jenna came. Home 2 days later, expecting everything to be as she left it. She walked through the door, dropped her bag, and called out like nothing had changed. "Hey babe, I'm home." That sing-song tone she used when she wanted to soften the air. I didn't answer. I was in the living room, waiting. She walked and saw the paperwork on the table, the laptop open, my expression. Her face shifted immediately, from casual to calculating. "What's all this?" she asked with a tight little laugh. "Are we playing detective now?" I didn't engage. I just said, "We need to talk." At first she played dumb, denied everything, said the messages were taken out of context, that I was overreacting. Then came the tears, fast, practiced. She reached for my hand, said she was scared, said she felt lost lately, that she didn't mean any of it, that she'd been venting, that her friends were bad influences. I didn't move, didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her, calm, detached. That's when she snapped. She started pacing, yelling, accusing me of invading her privacy, of being paranoid, of ruining our marriage. She flipped from guilt to fury in seconds, like she was cycling through every tool she had, trying to find the one that still worked. But none of it did. Because I wasn't reacting, I wasn't defending or apologizing, I wasn't trying to fix it, I was done. And I think that scared her more than anything else. Not the files, not the confrontation, but the fact that she couldn't reach me. Not anymore. The last thing I expected was Danielle at my door. She showed up the next morning clutching her phone like it weighed 100 pounds. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She and Jenna had been close for years. Workout. Classes, brunches, trips I hadn't been invited to. I figured she'd take Jenna's side, maybe even defend her, but she didn't. She looked nervous, almost shaky. "I need to show you something," she said. I let her in. We sat in the kitchen and she pulled up screenshots. Dozens of them. Messages between Jenna and her boss. Explicit ones. Photos. Plans. A running affair that had started almost a year ago. They'd been meeting up during work events, sneaking off on business trips that never existed. There were receipts, calendars, hotel bookings under fake names. Danielle didn't look smug, she looked tired. "I didn't know how deep it went," she said. "I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. She's been bragging about it, about how she's got everything lined up, how you'd never see it coming." I just sat there. No anger, no shock. Just a strange calm. It wasn't about jealousy or heartbreak anymore. It was clear. Proof that I hadn't been crazy, that my instincts weren't broken. Danielle said she was done covering for Jenna. That. She'd seen too much. She apologized, genuinely, and said she hoped I'd do something with this, not for revenge, for closure. And in that moment, everything clicked. I didn't need to scream or fight or prove anything. The story had told itself. Jenna's mask had fallen completely. And I didn't want it back. After Danielle left, I just sat there, no TV, no music, just the sound of the fridge humming and my own breath trying to stay steady. Everything was out in the open now. Messages, bank records, the affair. The betrayal wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real. Documented, time-stamped, confirmed, and in that silence it all played back. Not just the past few days, but years. The slow drip of control, the way I stopped questioning things, how I laughed off red flags because it was easier than confrontation. I'd let myself believe that being agreeable was the same thing as being supportive, that keeping the peace was more important than being heard. I thought back to our wedding. Ours. I remembered feeling nervous, not about marrying her, but about not being enough, and instead of dealing with that fear, I spent 8 years overcompensating, trying to prove I was the good guy, the stable one, the rock. But rocks don't bend, and I had over and over. I saw the full picture now, not just what she'd done, but what I'd allowed. And that's not about blame. It's about ownership. I gave too much, trusted too blindly, ignored my gut until it shut down completely, and in doing so I made it easy for her. That realization didn't break me. It freed me. Because now, for the first time in years, I could see clearly. No more illusion. No more hoping things would change. I wasn't trapped. I'd just been asleep, and now I was wide awake. The next morning I called the lawyer Marcus had recommended. No hesitation, no second-guessing. I told her everything, briefly, clearly. She didn't flinch, just asked, for documents, dates, and a list of assets. I sent it all by noon. Filing for divorce felt less like a decision and more like a final step in a process that had already happened. The relationship had ended the moment she chose manipulation over honesty. This was just the paperwork, she found out 2 days later. I got a string of texts, first confusion, then pleading, then insults. She said I was overreacting, that we could fix it, that no marriage is perfect. I didn't respond. I didn't owe her that anymore. Then she tried guilt, said I was ruining our lives, that I was walking away from everything we built. But I wasn't. I was walking away from the version of myself I became to survive her. And that wasn't a life. It was a performance. I blocked her number, left communication to the attorney. I didn't want closure. I didn't need a final conversation. I'd already had every conversation I needed in my own head, over and over, again. And the moment those papers were officially filed, I felt it. A shift, a release. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. There was no celebration, just stillness. And in that stillness I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. The days after the paperwork moved slowly, like the world was adjusting its pace to match mine. I didn't rush into anything. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell people unless they asked. I just started living. I made coffee every morning and sat outside instead of at the kitchen counter. I started running again. Not far, just around the neighborhood. At first it felt strange, like I was borrowing someone else's life, but little by little it began to feel like mine. I went back to therapy, not for answers, but for language. I wanted to understand how I'd gotten here, not just to heal, but to stay awake. I didn't want to slip back into sleepwalking through my own choices. The sessions were quiet, hard sometimes, but honestly, I started saying no more often, started pausing before saying yes. I stopped explaining myself so much. That alone changed everything. There were moments I missed her. Not Jenna, but the version of her I used to believe in, the one I created in my head. I had to mourn that illusion. And I did. Quietly, respectfully, because that part of me had been real even if she wasn't. One day I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't flinch anymore. I didn't brace for conflict or criticism or control. I just saw a man, older, a little worn, but here, fully here. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken, I felt whole. I used to think self-worth came from being needed, from being dependable, agreeable, easy to live with. I thought love meant bending, adapting, keeping things smooth. And for a long time I did just that. I made myself smaller so the relationship could fit. Now I know better. Reclaiming my identity wasn't a one-time decision. It happened slowly, in ordinary things. Saying what I actually thought instead of what I thought people wanted to hear. Choosing friendships that felt mutual. Asking for space when I needed it, without guilt. I learned to recognize manipulation, not just in others, but in myself. The ways I'd twisted my own needs into silence. The way I'd used compliance as a shield. That had to go too. The biggest change? I stopped making myself easy to handle. I started making myself honest to live with. I no longer filter everything through how it will land. I speak, I pause, I listen, and when something doesn't sit right, I don't shove it down. I trust that instinct now. People notice. They ask what changed, and I say this, I finally got tired of trying to be loved the wrong way. What Jenna did to me was real, but what I do next, that's mine. And I'm choosing better, every day. Quietly, intentionally, not to prove anything, just because I can. If you've ever felt like you were losing yourself piece by piece, know this, it's not too late. You can start again. You can come back to yourself. I did.